without further ado, let me introduce you real quick.
Sure.
Stephanie
Stebich.
Stebich.
Yeah. Or Stephanie Stebich for Americans.
For Americans, the newly appointed executive director.
1 month in as the new executive director of the Boris Lurie Art Foundation. As you might imagine from the name, we are singularly dedicated to telling the remarkable story of Boris Lurie, the artist, and Boris Lurie, the man. We are holders of a substantial body of his work because Boris was somebody who didn't particularly like to send his works out in the world, which was both good and bad. It's good because we have such deep holdings, but it's bad because his name is not as well known as it should be. However, he is really one of the few artists, even today it's remarkable, to get a New York Times obituary. And that's because of these two facets of his life. I think you spoke to that too, Akim. One is he was a Holocaust survivor. And it was through art that he found meaning and purpose in his life. And he would be there in the thick of it in New York in the 1950s, the whole 10th Street scene, artist galleries, artist co-ops, gallery co-ops. And he would take over a gallery from Elaine de Kooning. Again, they were all in this melting pot of ideas and everybody trying to break through, living very poorly. It's not a time where there was much interest in the art world. And he gathered some friends and would invite more artists, because at that time there were fairly egalitarian systems. They would have a theme and people could put their artwork in, and there would be a jury of fellow artists to say yes, yes, no.
And a fellow
yes,
artist.
Yes, yeah, so of other artists, yeah. Right.
So we're going to backtrack for a minute and go here into these wonderful works on paper of 1946. So I wanted to comment on these a little bit and look at them a little bit more carefully. There's a bit of reflection here, but it doesn't really matter. What I find fascinating, without getting too close into the narrative of these drawings, is that they're exceptionally well drawn. He definitely has a hand, as one would say. He arrives in New York in 1946. I don't know if he decides to be an artist or he simply starts being an artist. Stephanie, do you have something to say about that?
Both. As a young man, he was already identified as having talent, and the family had arranged for him to have informal art lessons.
This is before the camp.
Yes,
he was interned.
This is when he's in Riga, Latvia.
Yeah.
He also is making some money. He has some work to do, some designs to do, some for a publisher. This gives him a great sense of pride, a sense of what his future and possibility is. His father was an entrepreneur, a businessman, and I don't know that was really Boris's temperament. He was a sort of a gentler soul.
So he picks up where he left off.
Yes.
in a certain way.
And like many artists coming to New York from all over, whether it's Jackson Pollock coming into New York from Wyoming, they head where? They head to the Art Students League.
Stephanie, I wanted to ask you about the Art Student League and this moment that he takes one of his very rare courses, because he's mostly self-taught, but he arrives in New York in 1946. This is a wonderful painting of 1946, which is really exceptional. I mean, look at the faces. Of course it's haunting. Right. Of course there's the subject matter. There's the narrative. But this guy can paint. Look at this yellow blotch here of color on the cheek. This is really extraordinary. So would you tell me for a second, so what is his relationship to actually having studied art? Yes, he had talent before he was interned in the camps. And yes, he arrives in New York, takes this one course at the Art Student League with George Gross.
Yes. So even at that time, it wasn't entirely clear how one becomes an artist. It was still very much an apprenticeship. It was taking classes as you could. And that's why the Art Students League was such an important mecca. It was where you could find your people when you were coming from here or there. I mean, I think George O'Keeffe even took a class at the Art Students League. And the most unusual artists would be thrown together.
So this is one thing that I wanted to do real quick, is to jump from his very early period of 1946, 1947, where he's not in the art world. He's just painting. He's just drawing. It's the first spurt that comes out after his release from the concentration camps. And then he goes through this wonderful period, which we'll examine at another time,
Sure.
Which is his whole interaction with the art world, which you discussed a little bit earlier with the March Gallery and so on. And then he jumps we jump here to 1970, to the 70s, and he revisits this moment in the concentration camp. I mean, it's called the Holocaust series.
The early works, the drawings we looked at, are the wartime series.
Okay.
He went to work camps because he and his father were able-bodied, and then he also went to concentration camps. And so there was a division of sexes, which you see here. He's depicting men.
They're all men. That's what you were
They're all
talking about
men.
earlier.
These,
Yes.
again, emaciated, long, tall figures who, as was said over the entry gate, Arbeit
Macht frei.
macht frei. Working makes you free, which of course was never true, but that was the notion. There was a lot of work that was needed, and that's why people were rounded up to be part of the production of
The
war.
style is very different. It's gone through a whole transformation. It goes back to figuration after the whole big abex period of the 50s, but then not that he has an abex
Right,
period,
yeah.
because he stays
Right, but he's picking some of the language of the time. So, for example, he has not covered the entire painting. The canvas shows through. He has a kind of a very brushy style here, and then yet he also takes on the drip. This is something that he
drips.
welcomes as well.
And he welcomes it. Does he
Yes.
talk about the drips specifically? Just as it touched me a lot. I love drips in art. The accidents,
Yeah.
using the accidents.
Yeah, Boris talks a lot about also the art's trends and what's happening. He talks about what motivates him, and of course we talked earlier. He did an exhibition called The Doom Show, and this was very much about what was going on in the air. There was this terrible fear about the Cuban Missiles Crisis.
63.
Right? We have people who are building their shelters, people who are children under their desks. This is very much in the air.
Because it's the next step after the Holocaust. It's
Exactly.
the nuclear Holocaust.
Yes. It's the apocalypse. He's lived through one.
Yeah.
And to imagine as an artist, how do you get people's attention? How do you try to even understand this moment? So he calls his artists together, and the theme is the Doom Show.
But this is 10 years prior. This is 63.
Yes, exactly.
So this is what I call the Kirchner painting, or the German Expressionist painting, or the Die Wilde painting. You remember the Die Wilde in the 80s?
The colors are right there. This is
Definitely.
a portrait of who the press nicknamed the Son of Sam. This is David Berkowitz, clearly an unstable person who had a series of shootings that terrorized New York City.
And he shot these people. We know that it was him?
Yes. He was later arrested, confessed to all of these things. He had a .44 caliber. These were close, sort of in-your-face shootings.
Look how happy he looks with his little smile and his little lips.
And that's exactly how he was photographed, even with his mug shot.
Really?
He was sort of the common man, and to wrap your head around somebody who was in your midst, who would do this, and who could get away with it. Again, there were 8 shootings, eight fatalities.
And the dog?
The dog I know less about.
Look at that blood.
That might relate to the weapon he used, which was a .44 special caliber bulldog revolver.
That may be what it is, the bulldog revolver. So
Yep.
so the poor dog gets dragged into this.
Yes.
And has absolutely no fault. I'm just amazed at the color scheme. I love the composition. I think it's just such a good painting on its own merit. Of course, the history makes it even more interesting because this sort of smiley, happy guy.
Yeah, in contrast to this bloody...
Contrast to the bloody dog. And in fact, the bloody dog is the gun itself. You see, I think this painting is a masterpiece. Not more, not less. What date was this? Do we remember?
We have it circa 1955.
1955.
Again, Boris was didn't always have a good practice of dating things, and he would sometimes go back to artworks.
I find this incredibly beautiful, incredibly moving. And actually,
it's dated 56 on the canvas.
So from the pinup here in 1956, how does this come about? And then we can jump into this absolutely dreadful masterpiece with all the little pinups. Could you?
What might be surprising is that Boris was given by a fellow artist a huge collection of these pinups. So pinups were very much a thing of the 50s and 60s. There would be pinup calendars of varying degrees. Obviously, this also comes out of a World War II era where you would have pinup you'd have these women on cards. You see that here in the corner, the three of diamonds.
Yeah, this one here, the three of diamonds. Yeah.
So again, what is the world's oldest profession? And so the female figure. There were these trading cards, as we noted. There was any excuse to bear the female figure. You even see it in this advertisement here, Garden of Eden women's clothing here. Just like today, we have.
Where is this?
Right over here.
Oh yeah.
Garden of Eden.
Here, yes.
Just like today, we have Victoria's Fashion.
Yeah, Victoria's Secret.
Victoria's Secret. Sorry, you can tell I'm not up on that. So he received this incredible collection, which he would mine and find more materials to use.
But what's the relationship of the pinup to Boris Lurie? I mean, it seems to be a little bit jarring, or it is a bit jarring to see these pinups in the context of somebody who survived the Holocaust. Why the pinups? Now, what you were saying earlier, which was quite interesting, is that the men and women were separated. And he was, as you were saying, a sort of pubescent young man. You didn't use that term.
He had his first girlfriend, who sadly was also taken and part of that massacre outside of Riga in the woods. And so, and then he's separated from women again. So he's spending a lot of time thinking about it. And there is something in the air, too, this notion of the female figure, the distorted, dismembered. Earlier we talked about de Kooning and his women series. There was a certain violence against women. And so this is very much in the air and is a subject matter that he's attracted to.
So there's that,
and
so
it has
a flip side. It's almost the flip side of the pinup. He's showing the pinup, but at the same time showing the flip side of the pinup. And that's where the dismembered women
and it's
in.
also about provocation, right? These pinups, these were hidden items, right? These were not in polite society. They were not out. Just as he embraces the Nazi swastika, again, not something that was circulating. It was sort of agreed upon.
Yeah, I see it here. You were talking about biographical documents that come into this collage, where there's this memorial for the Riga Jews, no?
Yeah. And collage is very much in the air. We think about Braque and Picasso doing their own collages. Yeah. We think about Paul Klee using collages. So many people are drawn to collages, pulling in. It's just like found objects, just like found materials
from that perspective.
That Rauschenberg
and that is where it actually makes sense there to understand the context for this trunk here. Or the shoes, which come also in the 1970s, which are remade found objects, the shoes. So this remains a trunk, but the shoes, on the other hand. So Stephanie, what I want to talk about here, what I want to hear about, is that I find this red thread of the portrayal of the woman very interesting. Because we talked about how there's a sort of flip side of the pinup with the violence. Yeah. And this is what I'm interested in, that relationship between the violence and the pinup. And this is why I wanted to ask you. So the only person we know with whom he had a very strong relationship is Gertrude.
Well, he was married.
No, but I know. But who's alive today?
Yeah.
Who we can talk to?
Yeah. No. Who can bear witness? No, that would be good.
Was he attentive as a human being towards the woman in his?
I honestly cannot speak to that. I just don't know, and I haven't gotten to that part of his.
Did he bring flowers to Gertrude? Was he nice to Gertrude? Was he a touchy kind of guy? Was he?
I have no idea. That relationship, that you have to ask Gertrude about. What I would tell you is that he was notoriously difficult. He lived in his head. He was very intellectual. He would have intellectual fights with people, and they would be sort of written out of his life kind of things. He and Gertrude clicked on the very important level of art and the art world. They were always talking about things that were going on and going to galleries. He would catch every foreign film. I mean, he was a bit of a linguist. He spoke many languages. Again,
I heard.
from
read.
Yeah, English to the German to Russian and things like that.
This whole dismembered women is just a very interesting period in his work.
Again, it's interesting. We certainly know of Picasso working through these kinds of figures as well. I do think it comes out of the pinup. The pinups are also, in most cases, kind of wholesome girls, right? You project onto these girls, but they're not lewd and lascivious. They have the girl next door kind of quality as well. Also, these don't look like they're particularly, portraits of anybody.
There's this intimate moment. There's this intimate conversation between these two women. She's giving him something.
Yeah.
She's giving her something.
Yeah.
But yet there's the caricature, of course, the breasts and all of that. But
and,
yet
and
dismembered.
look how it's like a Renaissance portrait. There they are.
Absolutely.
Mounted, becoming into our three-dimensional space.
I'm handling at the moment a Giovanni Bellini. Mother and Child, which is in The Hague. It's the famous Philips Bellini.
Oh.
And it's actually for sale.
Wow. What kind of price tag, just out of curiosity?
It's $3 million. It's $3 million.
Steal.
But that's right,
Yeah.
compared to what it is. And there's this ledge.
Yep.
And the Madonna is holding the baby Jesus on the ledge. So of course the ledge then makes us be part of the painting.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting. So yeah, I find that there's a red thread in his work through these pinups. There was another work which really...
And yet again, look how different he has approached the subject stylistically. I mean, it's just 100... I mean, you get a little bit of the outline here, but a lot of artists are doing this outline.
But what's interesting, you're right, the treatment is completely different.
Yeah, I'm thinking about Gorky. Gorky used this heavy line too.
Yeah.
You kind of wonder which teacher told them go with this heavy outline.
I wanted to bring the camera around to another. There's a pinup that appears back here. So we have the.
And again, this is the reference to the movie, right? You can see that it's a movie. Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer.
Which Lolita. So this would be it would be like a recreation of the poster?
I think it actually is
the poster.
And again, think about what's happening at the time. In France, we're thinking about the Nouveau Realists. And what are they doing? They're ripping...
Jacques de la Villevier.
Yep, one after another. They're the accretion of consumer culture, of popular culture. And Lolita was this young girl. It's the great Nabokov. It's this great cross-country trip. It's all about sexuality. It's the forbidden young girl.
And yet he pairs it with this.
Ugh.
Boom.
So hard.
So hard. This is one of his most famous works. What I read about it, of course, is working with a shock value, but there's this combination of the shock of the two subjects. One is, of course, these bodies at the liberation. I guess this is probably a photo of the liberation. And he puts this, another une ineptie, for lack of a better word, a weird aspect of humanity, that you can do the most atrocious things, and maybe there's sort of a psychological weird thrust of death, and there's sex, and I'm thinking about the Lustmord works of George Grosz, of Otto Dix, who paint these murders. Do you know the ones that I'm talking about? Lustmörder.
And let's not forget the classic, the iconic Guernica by Picasso.
By Picasso, of course.
Where he has the woman with her head thrown back with this dead baby, and yet her scream is also almost like the orgasmic, le petit mort, the little death.
La petite mort,
Yeah.
exactly. You're so right. Even in this terminology, the orgasm is la petite mort.
Yes, and we know that Picasso, from his subject matters and his life, was very involved in a lot of relationships with the younger women,
including getting Marie-Thérèse and Dora Maar to fight.
Yeah.
And there's this fight to the death.
Yeah.
There's
always a bit of a sexual undertone and things like that.
Oh my God, look at this one. What I always come back to is,
and again, look at the material on which he works.
but what I find interesting there is that the pictorial quality
Yeah.
is incredible. The materials are incredibly beautiful.
It's basically unstretched canvas.
Yeah.
It was stretched.
Yeah.
It was fitted. He's pulled it apart.
So I see them and read these shoes as these sort of iconic woman's, almost fetishist.
Exactly. You think shoes, women's shoes. You think fetish. You think of these. They're almost stilettos. Maybe the heel could be a little thinner, but they basically push you up and further. When you wear these, the reality I can attest is you cannot step very far. Again, and it impedes your ability to walk, and it props you up. It gives you a better view of the rear end and pushes your front forward. It's this shoe sexualizes you.
But then what I'm thinking is these piles of shoes when they liberated the camps.
Of course, yeah.
And all these portraits of all these women through their shoes.
Because on the other side is the identifier and signifier.
And of course, the woman is not there anymore, but the shoe remains. Yeah. These are fascinating. These need context, I think, to really. But again, there's always this sort of almost fetishist red thread with a pinup. Then you find it in the shoe. You find pinups. You find there's this other pinup with a red background that you flagged in the book, which is really interesting.
Also, again, think about where Boris is attracted. He's attracted to drawing, which is easy and portable, and the key starter. Then he does painting in the great age of painting in the 50s and 60s in New York. Later, he takes up a little sculpture. Sculpture early on was difficult. It's hard to sell. It was hard to present. If you were a sculptor, you were really devoted to it until the rest of the art world caught up with you.
I mean, of course, there's the early blue period of Picasso. Of course, there's El Greco.
Yes, the elongation of the figure.
The elongation of the figure, the manieriste. I mean, obviously, he's looking at these things. We talked about German expressionism and de Wilde back here. The other no word aside from anecdotique is derivative.
Yes.
And I don't find these to be derivative at all. I just find them to be very good paintings. This is another fantastic painting. This one here. Yeah,
he would go on to also take the faces off. The Cabot Lodge series, again, he's decapitating. He's taking away the identity of people.
Just like here.
Yeah.
Just like here, exactly. So Basquiat uses this vocabulary so much.
Oh, he's picking up pop art references.
Sure. But more in a
he's using stencils here.
I hate these Basquiat and Warhol collaborations.
Yeah.
I think they're very weak.
But think about how old 59, 62, he's ahead of this. Again, he talks about how the pop artists come and look at his things and go over and do it smoother, more polished.
You said that in the car.
Yeah.
Now I understand.
Yeah.
Because when you look at the date,
Yep.
1959 to 62.
Look, all these artists, it was this incredible rich brew. Everybody was looking at everybody's work. Every Friday night, the streets were full. You got your meal with some
pork,
snacks.
Loins of pork. Again, the loin, we were in the pinups with the loins, so the loin of pork. And who was Henry Cabot Lodge?
Well, aside from being from a prominent Massachusetts family of long standing, he would be appointed by Kennedy to represent the United States in Vietnam. This is, again, Boris thinking about the time, thinking about the consequences. Who are the players here? Oswald.
Oh, yeah. There you go. Somebody who lives in Dallas.
With the pinups. This women and violence.
And Jacqueline.
Yep. Those two are up. Again, he gets the red, white, and blue in here.
And of course, in this guy's mind, you have this in the background.
And here he calls it, look at the title, Flat Car Assemblage, 1945 by Adolf Hitler.
Yeah, talk about dismembered women in collage.
Yeah, and talking about Rodin. What does Rodin do? Rodin, in many ways, is considered the first modern artist because he sculpts a hand and then he puts it in a drawer with the other hands. And he has all these reusable parts that he combines. And here are body parts in the most grotesque presentation.
And this one here also, so from the happening in oh my God, look at the happening 1945, as in the Boyce performance happening.
Or the happenings in New York, these gatherings.
Oh, that's the Lee Harvey
The Oswald,
Oswald.
yeah.
Here.
What was the most shocking thing? It was captured on television. Who was Lee Harvey Oswald? And then he is being shot. Again, it was a time of great confusion in America. You know, we had assassination after assassination after assassination. What was happening to America? Amérique, with a big exclamation point. What is happening in America? How can you make sense of, in a very short order? Again, in America, you have, I'm not going to get the chronology right, but you have the death, the assassination of key leaders. Malcolm X, Dr. King, JFK, and thereafter his brother, Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
You told me that this wonderful Boris Lurie Foundation is actually open to the public by appointment and invitation only. So would you extend an invitation to our audience to come and visit?
Sure. Well, I think once you listen to Akim and his enthusiasm, you have a whole new understanding and appreciation. And I'm grateful to you for that. And we are very much looking forward to our project this fall to bring some of his work in conversation with some of the other leading pivotal figures in art from whom so much has stemmed. So we have this fabulous facility. We often have artists, we have scholars, we have dealers, we have people who simply have an interest in knowing who this artist was. We are stewards and caretakers. We publish a lot on him. We encourage exhibition projects. And again, we try to make the work available. Boris would be thrilled to see that people were interested in his work and that it is, again, part of the conversation
So
today.
you could even conceive of a talk here.
Sure, we could do that. We have to be mindful. Again, there's still a working space. We have to conserve the artwork.
But I love that I love that part of it because it's almost coming in. Of course, it's a storage facility, but it's almost coming into a studio in the sense that you're seeing a lot of work. It's not perfectly organized because it's a storage facility, but it allows you to come into this person's mind, to come into this person's thought process, which has to do with art, which has to do with history, which has to do with preservation.
Yeah, for Boris Lurie, who died in 2008, this is as close as we can get today to feeling his essence, his vibe, his creativity.
But even maybe beyond, because he was a very difficult person, I understand.
Yes, he was argumentative. He was always liked some intellectual sparring. He thrived by being very engaged with the world. He was curious. He would see the latest movies, all different languages. He traveled to see exhibitions as well. And I think you said something quite wonderful, which is these artist foundation spaces, they're these alternative spaces, a little bit of a secret, a little hideaway in the art world. Yes, we all go to museums. We'll go to an art fair. We might go to a destination.
And I like it because it entails, therefore, discovery.
Yes.
And you invite the discovery aspect, and this is a wonderful thing because it makes the engagement very personal.
And you'll hear more and more about the artist than you would if you go anywhere else. Yeah. And you'll see.
Well, it gets very distilled. I mean, even an exhibitions are very important, of course. Yes. But it gets very distilled to the point of view of the curator.
Yes.
While here you're allowed to travel it in a wonderful way.
And we have his archives. If you want to take just take the camera for a quick peek. And when we say archives...
I'm following you. You mean archives.
Yes. Where's the light in here? To the left. Here we go. And when we have archives, we're talking about letters, we're talking about receipts, we're talking about installation photos. We are talking his telephone records. He kept a lot of things.
Poetry.
And yes, he was a poet and a writer. And these are materials we're also keen to get digitized and to share. We have some dedicated books on poetry of his own writings and musings. He also did his best to preserve the work of fellow artists and fellow co-founders of the No Art movement. Again, an art movement, New York, late 50s, sandwiched between abstract expressionism and pop art. So much other creativity, which both took from those movements and added its own. And his co-founders, along with Boris Lurie, we have Stanley Fischer and Sam Goodman. Again, lesser known figures, but boy, very, very interesting. And I think it's the moment now.
Are they still around?
Them. Both of them are now deceased, as is Boris. Again, Boris was born in 1924. So we recently celebrated his centennial with a special publication and some wonderful writing about him. I'll make sure you have the catalog. One of the commitments of the Boris Lurie Foundation, because Boris was a linguist, was not bilingual, trilingual, or quadrilingual, all of our books are published in more than one language. Always the host language, whether it's an exhibition in Latvia, where he lived his childhood, or whether it's in South America, or in Germany, or in Italy.
Could you show the South American book that's on the table here, which I find very interesting because, of course, this was an exhibition in Buenos Aires, but I find really beautiful that this book actually talks very much also about Argentina with the texts and the connection to Judaism, of course, but also I read
his own memoir. He really
right.
went back and wrote about these things. Again, imagine you are sort of pulled out of your daily life. You're at a work camp. What do you think about? How do you make sense of the life before, the life then, and what can you imagine of the life forward? And here's a sense here. Boris actually had a very faithful German Shepherd. And it was a gift from Gertrude Stein to Boris. You should ask her about that. It was a way to get Boris out of the studio. Walk the dog, be awake during the daytime. And of course, artists and their dogs, that's a whole nother exhibition.
One thing that I found interesting in this book is it talks about the duality of Argentina as being a land of une terre d'accueil for Jews, but also for Nazis.
So yes.
So again, there's so much duality and paradox, which we find here about Argentina, but so much in Boris Lurie's work. We're talking about the pinup again.
Yes.
There's both sides. There's the violence, and he somehow weaves these two sides, and it comes out incredibly well in this really beautiful book, which I very strongly recommend because it's a retrospective exhibition, so that shows the different periods, but also connects to Argentina and his connection to Borges and to literature from that period.
And the incredible writers, both fantasists, and you have to remember what is happening in Argentina. You know, you've got the Perón period, you have military dictatorships. It is also a country that is struggling.
So this is where the conversation opens, actually, to we're supposed to close the conversation, but this is where the conversation opens to the pitfall of brutal governing, basically.
Well, I would ask you, why are you doing this exhibition now? What is in the air?
I don't want to answer.
Why these artists? What conversation does it spark for you? Again, Rodin, such an important pillar, Georges Grosz, an important social commentator, and Boris Lurie, also a social commentator in part.
Well, there's going to be a whole exhibition about that.
Yes.
But
give us a little hint. Because if Georges Grosz were alive, he would be very involved with the political figure and the political dialogue today.
Well, that was the several exhibitions I did. Georges Grosz commentating from the yonder, but commentating about the political climate in 2015.
Yes, the candidates.
The candidates. That was the topic of that exhibition. Then there was Of Mice and Men that I did in 2020 during that election cycle. And the violence that I showed I actually made a catalog, but the violence that I showed, which got me banned from Instagram, actually turned out to be a lot worse on January 6th.
Than you could even imagine.
That one could even imagine. So these erosions of institutions are something which in the longer span of history is something that maybe is a loss of something gained with so much blood. Think the French Revolution. Think these are incremental victories that can get dismantled very fast. And one of the things that I'm interested in, I realize I'm not directly answering your
but I like your pathway.
One of the things that I'm very interested in, I read several articles about, there's one, I think maybe in the New Yorker, or maybe in the Atlantic, I'm not sure, about how in Germany, in the pre-war period, Hitler very much relied on the legal framework to make certain things legal and make certain things illegal. So to misdirect the use,
reshaping,
the
reshaping,
but reshaping in a horrible way, where something, in fact, in the book, there's a wonderful quote, I think, at night I knocked on your door. A white-faced Jew, a refugee hunted down in torn shoes. You called the authorities, tipped of the spies, and thought, well done, all in the service of God. So you're doing something legal here.
Right.
You're calling the authorities. You're abiding to the rules, and you're doing it in the service of God. So one thing that I will.
And what's really missing here is compassion for your fellow man.
It's not there. It's not there because you hide under the legality.
Yeah.
And I showed you and Gertrude this book yesterday, which is so important, Jud und Christus, how the Jews killed Christ by this Protestant priest in 1923. And then out of that, you can build certain laws. So here's why we're doing this. Because Jews killed Christ.
We're always looking for justification.
So we're looking for justification.
We're looking for reasons to allow
but
this
the
horrible
whole,
behavior.
The whole
to subjugate someone else, to subjugate whole groups of people.
Religious background to make laws. That is perversion, and that is the word that I did not use in our whole conversation. So I guess you asked me the question again about this exhibition, about this idea of the exhibition. It's something that I said yesterday in our meeting. Is hell a pathway to redemption, to being?
Do you have to go through hell?
Do you have to go through hell?
Yeah.
I said yesterday, Pax Americana from 1945 lasted until now. Hopefully, it's going to stay for a little while longer. But it stayed for a very long time. It came out of hell.
Right.
So somehow we needed hell save ourselves somehow?
I mean, the horror of World War I, called the Great War, one could not even imagine to go back.
That it could go 10 times worse.
Yeah. And then on the same land, among the same peoples, you are doing it all over again.
Worse.
Yes, yes.
And then there's Stalin behind there. I mean, I know that he had a portrait of Stalin, but there's Stalin behind there who killed not, 6 million people, but 50 million people. And the gulags, in the exhibition that I did, Der Kandidat, one of the objects that I had was the first edition of Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago in English. So it's the first time that these ideas came out in the US in the 70s when the book was published. Suddenly you could read about what happened. We didn't know what happened. It was completely closed.
Yeah. And that's what we need our artists for.
Yes.
We need our artists to actually even make sense of the moment, let alone connect our moment to our history.
Or at least to expose it, or at least to show them.
And then also try to give us hope.
Yeah.
Hope as to what's possible.
Yeah. So this is the purpose of my work, is hope.
Yeah.
It's a labor of love.
Yeah.
It's trying to find ways, through the fire can come something else. And Lurie is the most compelling example of that, because he had a long career, and I see has talked about Gertrude, but all of us, he inspires so many people to think and to engage with with difficult subject matter.
And what's interesting too, and again, this wonderful space reminds us that he could process different moments, different stories, being of the moment or going back to wartime series, going back to the concentration camp images. Again, he wasn't finished with that topic.
And process are not answers. And this is something that I find incredibly interesting with Boris Lurie's work, is that he doesn't give any answers. He doesn't tell you it is like this or it has to be like that. He says, so here's what it is. Now, You think about it.
Right.
You look in the mirror.
Yeah.
You look into your soul.
Yeah.
You look into who you're voting for.
Yeah.
You look in how you're dealing with your kids.
Yeah.
Are you traumatizing your kids or not? Are you being good to your
And that's
dog
why
or not?
it would never work. He knew it. He was provoking the art world, and the art world shut him out. In the time, this was too recent.
But here, I'll offer
Yeah,
something up
yeah.
to you, Stephanie.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons is that pop art, in my opinion, was the first type of art that gave sort of answers, that says, okay, so here's how it is. This is how it works. And when Warhol comes up with that sort of concept of the objectification of image, or not the objectification, but the
consumer culture, the thing.
The consumer culture. Yeah. I mean, we're now 40, how many years? We're 60 years after Warhol, and we are living exactly what he was showing.
Sure, the consumer culture.
Remember, though, the great Warhol paintings, the really great Warhol paintings,
are the disaster series. Yes.
I have shivers thinking about
the electrical chair.
The electric chair, the accidents,
the car crashes,
the tuna, all of these things. And look at that relationship with Boris Lurie.
Yeah.
Look at that relationship with Boris
Because on
Lurie.
one level, we cannot not look.
We cannot not look.
We cannot
and Warhol
look away.
Puts it right there.
Yeah.
So Warhol.
And the scale at which he did. These were not small, modest.
Oh my God.
These were as big a canvas as
the accident series at the Museum of Modern Art with a blank red canvas on one side, and then the black and white accident on the other side.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, so on this note, thank you very much.
Let's leave it with hope, and I want to thank Patrick Gora, who's a key player here at the foundation, keeper of the collections, and head registrar.
And in fact, Patrick, I'll leave you with a last word, because the beginning of the conversation started with, how was your experience in the last 5 years? Have you been able to go beyond the shock value? Can you live with these things? And how, I would say, maybe I would dare say, how have you grown in the last 5 years, being in such close, intimate contact with the work of Boris Lurie? What has it done to your psyche, to your heart? Has it opened your heart, for example?
I would say this is a very good way to express it. I think most of all, it's helped me to look inward in a more clear-eyed and honest way, and look inward, and then how myself, how I exist in the world, how I interact with it, how it affects me, and what influence I may have on it. I think that's a really central premise to Lurie's work.
I would even say that that's a very central premise to great artists' work. I mean, this is what makes an artist great, in my opinion, is to allow, to open a gap, to open a space for someone to find things inside oneself that one didn't even know was there. So your response was very interesting, because this is not about art history. It's not about promoting the work of Boris Lurie. It's not about it's just about you when you're alone here. It's about that intimate relationship. So thank you for that.